You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 41, Magnesium. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here today. How are your multiple personalities going? Have you found shifting into different identities to be helpful to you? Did you come up with some identities that I didn't mention? Good for you. Today we're going to talk about magnesium. I debated with myself back and forth quite a bit about whether to do this episode or not because I feel like the topic has been beaten to death. And you can go online and find 1,000 different articles that are all exactly the same. And it becomes like the Charlie Brown teacher voice. But on the other hand, 80 to 90% of the US population is magnesium deficient. That's huge, and it might include you. I want you to have boundless energy for years to come, and you can't live your best life with chronically low magnesium levels. So here we are. Magnesium is a cofactor in 300 different chemical processes in the body, so not having enough magnesium causes suboptimal subcellular performance, which is super lame. It can cause anything from almost imperceptible energy lows to death. Yes, death. Some people can correct their potentially deadly heart arrhythmias or high blood pressure with just fixing their low magnesium levels. Low magnesium levels can also cause or contribute to calcification of the arteries. It's a big deal, and it's a big problem that's really cheap and easy to fix. So let's dive in, and I'll really try to avoid slipping into the trap that everyone else regurgitates. You can find that stuff everywhere, and I want to keep this short and genuinely useful to you. Our little friend magnesium is a group 2 alkaline earth element. It is the 8th most common element in the crust of the earth. The concentration of magnesium in the ocean is 55 millimoles per liter. In the Dead Sea, it's 198 millimoles per liter. I live by the Great Salt Lake, so I think the concentration there is probably higher than in the sea too. The concentration of magnesium in the human body is about 20 millimoles per kilogram of fat-free tissue. It's the 4th most abundant mineral in your body. 99% of magnesium is located in the bone, muscles, and non-muscular soft tissue, not in your blood serum. That's kind of a big deal. 1 to 5% of the magnesium in your body is ionized or free, and 95 to 99% is complexed to another element or molecule. It's positively charged, so it likes to bind to something negatively charged. Ionized calcium has the greatest biological activity. Magnesium is hydrophilic, or water-loving. It dissolves in water very easily and binds more tightly to water than calcium, potassium, or sodium. You have 15 essential minerals in your body. They are calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, iron, chloride, zinc, copper, iodine, manganese, molybdenum, phosphorus, selenium, sulfur, and silica. If you've ever sweated or thrown up or had diarrhea, you probably know about electrolytes. These are molecules that carry electrical charges in water. Our bodies are electric, so that matters. All electrolytes are minerals, but not all minerals are electrolytes. Some electrolytes are essential minerals, and some electrolytes can actually be toxic. Arsenic, cadmium, and lead are electrolytes, so hopefully those aren't in your Gatorade. But magnesium is so highly water-soluble, taking certain magnesium supplements can sometimes draw water into the intestine really quickly, causing a disaster pants kind of scenario. So you want to pick a good magnesium supplement at the appropriate dose. Because it's so soluble in water, magnesium chloride is the salt used in float tanks to make you super buoyant in the water because they can get the salt concentration up really high. Have you ever been in a float tank? I've only done it once, so I'm no kind of expert, but it was definitely a very different sensation to just float in complete darkness with no sensory input whatsoever. Side note, it's traditionally said that you absorb a dose of magnesium through your skin in a float tank or an Epsom salt bath. But new thinking is that maybe the dose of magnesium you get is actually from breathing in the water vapor in the air. I thought that was interesting. It's probably some of both. Okay, so other than being the fourth most common mineral in our body, why is everyone so crazy about magnesium? Well, it's involved in 300 metabolic reactions that are essential to our life, including energy production, blood pressure regulation, nerve signal transmission, and muscle contraction. Sometimes just a little cheap and easy to find magnesium can completely cure high blood pressure and heart arrhythmias. It can prevent heart attacks and calcification of the arteries, depending on the person, of course, and their entire broad metabolic picture. Magnesium is important for our metabolism, our immune function, and our bone strength. It can prevent or treat muscle spasms and help muscles to be more supple. It's also involved in protein formation, gene maintenance, and nervous system regulation. It helps with the release of neurotransmitters. It's a stabilizer for enzymes, including several enzymes that generate ATP, the energy molecule in mitochondria. Magnesium might be more important for bone health than calcium. It's essential for vitamin D absorption and is required for the production of the hormone calcitonin, which draws calcium into the bones. If you remember back to episode 21, the other thing besides magnesium that keeps calcium where it should be is vitamin K2, one of my favorites. Everything works together beautifully. Magnesium is also the ultimate relaxation mineral. It's essential for both contraction and relaxation of muscles, so your body cannot relax without enough magnesium on board. Neither can your mind. Magnesium hangs out in the synapse between two neurons along with calcium and the neurotransmitter glutamate. Calcium and glutamate are both excitatory. If there's enough magnesium around, it can sit on the NMDA receptor site without activating it, like a guard at the gate. But when there's not enough magnesium around, calcium and glutamate can keep activating that excitatory receptor, revving up our brain. Magnesium can also activate GABA receptors, which are calming receptors that are also activated by sleeping medications, anxiety medications, seizure medications, and anesthetics. Magnesium is needed for a calm demeanor and for restful sleep. Magnesium is needed for the proper utilization of calcium, potassium, vitamin K, vitamin D, and many other nutrients. So other healthy stuff can't do its healthy job without adequate levels of magnesium. High estrogen levels are often correlated with low magnesium levels. If you remember back to our 2 episodes about hormones, high estrogen often causes heavier menstrual flow, PMS, period cramps, headaches, breast tenderness, anxiety, and trouble sleeping. Magnesium can help alleviate all of those. Plus, remember, you need to balance estrogen with proper levels of progesterone. Risk of high blood pressure is 70% lower among people with adequate to high normal magnesium levels. 70%. That's a really big number, like mind-blowingly big. Most people in our society think that increasing blood pressure just comes along with increasing age. But guess what? Increasing age is often correlated with decreasing magnesium levels, too. It's such a safe and easy fix that has only positive side effects. Well, except for explosive diarrhea, I suppose. We might count that one as a negative side effect, but it can be avoided. The rest of the side effects, like more tranquil energy during the day, more restful sleep at night, less hardening of the arteries, and stronger bones and teeth, are all good. If everyone who first got diagnosed with pre-hypertension or regular hypertension, which is high blood pressure, were properly tested for magnesium status and supplemented if needed, there would be a lot fewer people on blood pressure medication. Why take a medication to treat a condition that's not even a condition, just a symptom of a low mineral level? Plus, The first-line blood pressure medications are diuretics, which further decrease your magnesium and other electrolytes. It's insane. If your blood pressure is high, almost no doctor would ever talk about curing it, just treating it or managing it, which usually requires adding more and more and more medications to the list over the years. I see tons of people on 4 or 5 or 6 blood pressure medications. Some of them probably really do need those, but some of them would probably be benefited by some magnesium. And all of those blood pressure medications aren't even treating the root cause. They're just masking it. Kind of like spray painting the tree leaves green, if you remember back to that episode. And they simultaneously make it harder for it to ever really be cured. High blood pressure is dangerous and should most definitely be dealt with. And I'm glad we live in a world where we have medication that can treat it. But like always, there's more to the story than just take a reading, if it's high, prescribe a drug. But that's literally the standard of care. It's a similar story with arrhythmias. People go on medications that zap their energy and or get their heart nodes literally burned when it's possible that their arrhythmia could be cured just by fixing their mineral and nutrient levels. Conservative people say 2/3 of the population is magnesium deficient, and what would the opposite be? Liberal people, I guess. Liberal people, magnesium liberal magnesiophiles. I kind of like that word. Maybe it could catch on. You get the point. Other people say that 90% of the population is magnesium deficient. I hope you can see that this can have far-reaching effects. We only talked about a handful of the 300 things magnesium is involved in. The next logical question is, but why? I think it's a question we should ask more of in general. Take a cue from the wise toddlers in your life. Why? 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 But really, our bodies can only function optimally on high levels of magnesium. Then why is it so hard to get enough? Well, lots of reasons. All of them related to our modern environment. One reason is that the soil that our crops are grown in is magnesium depleted, and or the crops we eat are magnesium depleted because of the kinds of artificial fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides that are used. This is part of a longer discussion, but when crops aren't fertilized by organic compost, the amount of magnesium in the fruit of the plant is lower. It might also have to do with the living microbiome of the soil. Another reason is that processed foods are very low in magnesium. The more processed foods you eat, the lower your magnesium level is likely to be. Something I mention in just about every episode, sugar washes magnesium out of your system. So does caffeine. Fluoride and chlorine also decrease your magnesium levels. Magnesium does play a role in chelating heavy metals, which is a good thing, in that it protects you from toxicity, but the more toxins in your environment, the more magnesium gets used up, cleaning those up too. Calcium decreases your magnesium levels, so getting a lot of calcium from supplements, lots of dairy products, or calcium-fortified foods like orange juice can decrease your magnesium levels. Taking lots of calcium can actually decrease your bone health by decreasing your magnesium level. Just being stressed can actually reduce your magnesium levels, and exercising hard, and sweating, which is good for you, but decreases your magnesium level. Alcohol and drugs can decrease your magnesium levels, including prescription drugs, maybe especially prescription drugs. We won't spend too much time here, but proton pump inhibitors for heartburn, I have a lot to say about those, reduce your magnesium level, as do statins for cholesterol. I have even more to say about those. Okay, you already know diuretics for blood pressure can waste magnesium, so can vasodilators, fluoride, steroids, birth control pills, aminoglycoside antibiotics, digoxin, amphotericin, cyclosporin, and cisplatin. Those last few drugs are for some pretty serious conditions, so I'm hoping none of you have to take those. But if you do for some reason, you can still optimize under your own unique circumstances. Getting our nutrients from our food is always the goal. People used to get some of their magnesium from their drinking water, but with fluoride and chlorine in the water, plus water softeners and purifiers these days, most people don't get much or any magnesium from water. Magnesium is the central atom in the chlorophyll molecule. So making chlorophyll, the first step is to put magnesium right there in the middle and then it build out around the edges of it. So you're going to get magnesium from plants that you eat. There's some magnesium in leafy greens, spinach, kale, sprouts. Nuts and seeds are also good sources of magnesium. Unprocessed cereal grains are also a good source, but they're not very common these days. Avocados, bananas, and legumes are a pretty good source too. Pink Himalayan sea salt has a little bit of magnesium, as does wild caught fish. And dark chocolate. A good, healthy variety of fresh, real, actual, non-engineered food is awesome. Not as awesome as it used to be because our soils are so depleted and kind of generally jacked up. But real food is always best. Even then, I think it's good to consider taking a magnesium supplement. There's a spectrum of propensity to take supplements. Some people are extremely reluctant and others act like it's a competitive sport, right? I tip to the right side of that equation. Well, maybe it's the left. If that's the liberal side, the magnesiophilia side, whatever. I like supplements and I take, well, more than a few of them. But I get and totally respect people who are much less inclined to just pop a bunch of pills. If that's you, I kind of love that about you. But if I were to pick only 2 supplements that most people should take, magnesium would be one of them. Unless we had good blood work data that showed that it wasn't needed. That would be a different story, and highly unlikely. So for most people, magnesium would be my number 1 or number 2 pick. I haven't quite decided which it would be. It would be between that and omega-3 fish oil. But I do think it would rank above some of the other things I think are critically important, like vitamin D and vitamin K2. The National Institutes of Health recommends 310 to 360 milligrams a day for women and 400 to 420 for men. Peak performance type athletic and body optimizing people recommend 5 milligrams per pound of body weight. That's pretty different. That would be, instead of 300 milligrams a day, 750 milligrams a day for a 150 pound person. I tend to think the higher number is closer to the truth, and people with a lot of muscle mass may need even more than that. Your absorption of magnesium is correlated with how deficient your body is in magnesium. So if you have pretty high body levels, you don't absorb as much from the same pill that somebody who's deficient will absorb. Of all the magnesium consumed, only 24 to 76% of it will be absorbed, and the rest eliminated. Magnesium is mainly absorbed in the small intestine by passive electrochemical gradient solvent drag. It gets in between your enterocyte cells in your gut lining. We'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks. A small amount of magnesium is absorbed in the large intestine. Interestingly, magnesium excretion through urine follows a circadian rhythm with maximal excretion occurring at night. It's pretty hard to get magnesium toxicity unless you have kidney disease or take really radically high doses of magnesium supplements. If you have any medical condition, be it kidney problems or anything else, always make sure you use good judgment for your own idiosyncratic situation. Signs of magnesium overdose are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle weakness, irregular breathing, lethargy, and urinary retention. Like every nutrient, phytonutrient, vitamin, mineral, enzyme, amino acid, anything, it doesn't just work all on its own. One nutrient or supplement isn't going to create a singular effect for you. We've been so conditioned to think in terms of drug studies. You take this pill or a placebo pill. You take one measurement. Either it worked or it didn't. It's not like that. Everything interacts, and we're trying to provide all the right conditions and supplies so that our bodies have what they need to thrive. And that state of thriving doesn't have to decrease with every birthday we have. Really. Okay, back on track. So magnesium is required for all kinds of pathways and other nutrients to run correctly. Likewise, magnesium isn't properly absorbed if we don't have enough active vitamin B6, called P5P, on board, and active B9, which is folate, and active B12, or methylcobalamin. They're all required for magnesium to be properly absorbed and utilized. The odds are pretty high that you're low in magnesium. Plus, it's easy and pretty inexpensive to supplement, so that's why it's one of the top things I recommend that you consider taking every day, or multiple times a day if you're trying to get up to that 700 or 800 milligrams a day. But like everything, the best way to know whether you need it and how much is to get your blood tested. If you remember, 99% of the magnesium in your body is bound up in your bones and muscles and stuff. Only 1% is found in extracellular fluids. Of that, only 0.3% is found in serum. Your serum level of magnesium does not reflect your total body magnesium status. It's almost meaningless. And guess what's measured with almost all lab tests? Serum magnesium. Mostly worthless. In fact, a high serum level of magnesium sometimes, but not always, correlates with low body magnesium stores, because it can sometimes mean that magnesium is being leached out of bones and muscles because the total body magnesium is deficient. Despite what some people in the functional medicine realm say, there isn't a perfect measure for magnesium. The best would be a complicated series of both blood and urine tests, and it's not worth it to do that for regular people who are just trying to live their healthiest lives. So the next best thing is to measure red blood cell magnesium. This is the best option we have. It's not perfect, but it's a much better evaluation than serum magnesium. It's completely possible to have so-called normal magnesium blood levels and still have a total body deficit. You also have to take in consideration with all lab tests that it's a comparison to the average among the population, which is not the optimal person or the optimal you. What is considered so-called normal has actually decreased over the years because the average nutrient status of people has decreased over the years. So, don't take it at face value if your doctor says your magnesium levels are fine. First of all, if it's a serum level, it's probably worthless. Second, if it's a red blood cell level, it still isn't fine if it's in the lower half of the so-called normal range. But if your doctor's smart enough to order a red blood cell level, she probably understands that already. Whew, there's so much more we could talk about. I have all the information handy about the different forms of magnesium supplements, but I don't want to bore you or waste your time by reading off a list of all the forms, followed by which each different form is good for. That's when we get into the realm. It's good to know and to use that to make your decision about which form to take if you decide to do a supplement. Some of it has to do with how it's able to be absorbed, but a lot of it is just related to what it's complexed to. Magnesium is most active in its unbound ionic form. Remember, magnesium is a positively charged molecule, so it looks to be bound to a negatively charged molecule to form a salt or a chelate. So a lot of magnesium taurate is good for blood pressure and magnesium glycinate is good for sleep is just because the amino acid taurine is good for blood pressure and the amino acid glycine is good for sleep. So it's not that the actual magnesium in that supplement is magically different in some way. If it would be useful to you to talk more about different forms of magnesium, I'd be more than happy to do that in the future. But for now, what I'll say is to probably avoid magnesium citrate, magnesium chloride, and magnesium oxide. Consider where you are on the spectrum of supplement enthusiasm. The optimal would be to take several different forms of magnesium, so to get up to your 700 milligrams by taking a few different forms here or there. If that seems extreme, just start with one well-absorbed form, like magnesium malate, taurate, threonate, glycinate, or orotate. You can pick one based on whether you prefer help with sleep, or heart health, or energy production. Another good option is to try something called Mag-SRT. It's made by Jigsaw Health. That's a slow-release magnesium malate form with really good studies to show actual efficacy. Or there's one called Magnesium Breakthrough by BioOptimizers. That one's my favorite because it's a combination of 7 different forms of magnesium all in one pill, which is super awesome. I take that one during the day, every day, and magnesium glycinate at bedtime. I also take extra magnesium on days that I sweat a lot in my sauna. Chronic latent magnesium deficiency has been linked to atherosclerosis, myocardial infarction, hypertension, arrhythmias, malignant tumors, kidney stones, blood lipid alterations, psychiatric disorders, fatigue, and poor athletic performance. Magnesium is necessary for energy production and iron, zinc, and copper balance. And 300 other things. I hope I've convinced you or reaffirmed to you how important magnesium is for your body. I'll put some links in the show notes to those 2 supplements I mentioned. They're not affiliate links or anything, so do with them whatever you wish. If you're interested in learning more, I'll also put links to a book called The Magnesium Miracle and a concept called the Root Cause Protocol that shows magnesium is the root cause for a lot of medical conditions. It's super interesting. Next week, we're going to talk about sword fights and dragon battles, so get excited. Until then, decrease your risk of high blood pressure by 70%, give your body what it needs to flourish, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.